Shalom, everyone. My name is Shmuel Starklar, and the title of the series of lectures is Perfect Harmony, the Torah Blueprint for Humanity's Partnership with HaShem in the Scientific Age. I'm a professor in the Electrical Engineering Department at Ariel University. My email appears below. I will be more than happy to hear your comments, questions, whatever else you would like to share with me. The series of lectures is not part of the curriculum of Ariel University. However, I will add a word or two about Ariel. The beautiful campus is located in the city of Ariel, and Ariel is located in the biblical heartland of Samaria in central Israel. So we're located about a 35-minute drive east of Tel Aviv, and about an hour and 15-minute ride north of our capital, the holy city of Jerusalem. So the goal of these talks is to, first of all, discard some misconceptions that we may have about HaShem, replace them with a better understanding of HaShem's messages to humanity and his master plan for his creation. Hopefully, we will be able to reveal a profound partnership that exists between HaShem and his human partners, and realize how faith, knowledge, and scientific discovery are partners in illuminating the truth of our existence. We will be studying some principles of Jewish faith, looking into the written Torah and the oral Torah, teachings of great Torah scholars throughout the ages. We will look into the modern scientific method and look at some major scientific discoveries. We will look a little bit at history and, of course, use our common sense. So we will learn together various portions of the Torah, take a deep dive into the messages that Hashem wishes to convey to all of humanity. We will also learn about some of the amazing scientific discoveries of the past centuries and see how our understanding of physical reality through scientific study can also aid in understanding Hashem's messages and plan. I think that we will lead to a new understanding and perception of the harmony that exists in reality as a synthesis of the spiritual and physical parts of our existence. And this will ultimately reveal a unified picture where faith, knowledge, and scientific discovery are not opposing forces. On the contrary, they work together naturally to guide humanity to a meeting of the minds with our Creator. I would like to start by posing a challenging question. This question concerns the relationship between the Creator and his creation, and specifically the highly intelligent creatures, the human being. Humans are blessed with a unique capability to dream amazing dreams, develop elegant equations that describe our physical reality. In a never-ending quest to understand our reality and harness it in innovative ways. So, for example, here we see two very important equations that were developed in the first decades of the 20th century and that forever changed our understanding of reality. The first is Einstein's famous equation that unites mass with energy. And the second is Schrodinger's equation of quantum mechanics that describes how reality on the fundamental level is really counterintuitive, not comprehensible. It is wave-like in nature and with a built-in uncertainty. More on this later on. Now, humans are very intelligent and creative, capable of abstract thinking. Here is Salvador Dali's famous masterpiece of surrealism from 1931 called The Persistence of Memory. So humans possess this awesome intelligence and creativity not shared by other living things. There are scientific studies that point to some level of intelligence in the animal kingdom, such as the dolphin. But the best that a dolphin can do is randomly scribble some colors on a canvas. Do dolphins ask themselves what life is all about? What is expected of them? Or how the universe evolved? The only life form that we know of that asks these questions are humans. Now, here is the question I'd like to pose. It is safe to assume that the Creator possesses much higher intelligence in his creations. He surely realized that his creation will want to understand how and why they have been created. HaShem would certainly realize that at some point in their evolution, humans would begin to search for explanations that satisfy their intellectual curiosity. Now, the Torah conveys to humanity messages and commandments relating to belief in HaShem, knowing HaShem, loving HaShem, establishing an ethical code of conduct. However, it seems as though HaShem is not easily perceivable by us highly intelligent creatures. For example, Edvard Munch's subject in his famous work, The Scream of 1893. In our discussions, we will address these issues, including the questions of contemporary scientists which require our attention. How can we believe and love HaShem if he is elusive, hard to perceive, and let alone engage in a partnership with? So, this is a very challenging issue that we will focus on. Before we address these challenging questions, let's first briefly review some major events in Jewish history, some basic concepts of the Torah, and mention the main Jewish Torah scholars and commentators of the Torah that we will refer to in our discussions. Then we will review some important concepts of the modern scientific method. And with this background information in place, we can begin to study the Torah and its universal messages to humanity, as described, for example, in the first book of the Torah, Genesis. I believe that this approach will lead to a new understanding of what HaShem's grand plan is, and is the key to taking on these challenging questions that we asked. So here is a nicely designed summary of Jewish history that I found online and free to download. We see here two timelines. The upper one starts from, is a countdown, starting from BCE, and then a count up in CE. And the lower one is the Hebrew calendar year, starting from year 1, the appearance of the humans, Adam and Eve, the first creations described as being in the form of Tselem Elohim, or HaShem's image. This event is so significant for the development of the world that the Hebrew calendar starts from this point and does not account for the billions of years that preceded it. We will certainly get into this point later. The various colors depict the Jewish population in various parts of the world. Blue signifies the population in the land of Israel. So here is the biblical period. First temple period, second temple period, the exile between these two temple periods, 70-year exile, and the long exile after the destruction of the second temple, and the return to the land of Israel, starting in the 17th and 18th centuries. Here I mark in green two major historical events that have to do with the oral Torah. The first religious leader of the fledgling nation of Israel, Moses, received the Torah on Mount Sinai in the 14th century BCE, For 40 days and nights, with the children of Israel waiting in anticipation at the foot of the mountain, HaShem spoke with Moses and orally transferred the Torah to him. He received the Torah orally by HaShem, while the 10 Commandments were written. Now, when Moses returned, a process was put in place to orally transmit the Torah to his generation and future generations. In parallel, an abridged version of this Torah was written down, which is known as the 5 books of the Torah, the written Torah. It was clear that it is impossible to properly understand the written Torah without the explanations of the oral Torah. It was also clear that the written Torah deliberately conveys its messages on several levels, many levels actually. These levels start from the basic literal translation, moving on to an exegetic method that is based upon a known set of rules, midrashic interpretations, and finally deeper and deepest levels, which were not meant for general consumption and were expressed cryptically. However, over time, some of these teachings of the oral Torah were in danger of being forgotten or distorted. This problem was compounded by the introduction of foreign influences into Jewish culture, exile from the land of Israel, and translation of the written Torah, which we will shortly discuss. Despite the prohibition to write down the oral Torah, Jewish sages, realizing that the exile of the Jewish people will lead to further degradation, and so in the 2nd century of the Common Era, the sages began the process of codifying and writing down the oral Torah, including the first codified version of Jewish law, halacha, known as the Mishnah. Here I summarize in blue some major events that have to do with the written Torah. Until the 3rd century of the Common Era, the written Torah was only in the Hebrew language. The Torah sages were firmly against translating it to other languages. The reason was simple. Only the original Hebrew text can convey all of the messages from the simplest level to the deepest, with all of the required nuances and means of interpretation as expounded upon in the oral Torah. It was felt that a translated version would corrupt these messages. Despite these objections, the Greek conquerors of Israel demanded that this translation be done, resulting in the first translation to Greek by 72 Jewish elders in the 3rd and 2nd century BCE. This was followed throughout the ages by other translations into other languages, and the first English version written in the 7th century CE, eventually culminating in the King James Version, which appeared in the 16th century. Now, today there are several modern versions of the English translation, which are not based upon the authentic Jewish traditions as described in the oral Torah. To fill this void, Jewish scholars over the past century have published translations that are based on traditional Jewish principles and leading Jewish commentators. These Jewish translations have gone a long way in undoing much of the damage that has accumulated over more than 2,000 years. However, for the most part, they do not consider a portion of the oral Torah that points to a deeper understanding of the written Torah. This deeper level is known in Hebrew as Torah Tasod, or the secret Torah. It is also referred to as Kabbalah, or the received Torah, since it was passed down and received orally by a few, select few, throughout the generations. It was not disseminated to the general public. It was widely accepted that this level of Torah learning should only be studied orally and only by those students deemed worthy of learning the Kabbalah under the guidance of a learned teacher. I would like to now briefly mention several giant luminaries of Jewish law, philosophy, and commentators of the Torah. Let's start with Maimonides, known in Hebrew as the Rambam, which is an acronym for Rabbi Moshe, the son of Maimon. He lived most of his adult life in Morocco and Egypt, where he served as the revered leader of the Jewish community. He also worked as a physician and studied in universities, where he studied the sciences and philosophy. He is considered to be one of the most prolific and influential Torah scholars of all times. He arranged and codified Jewish law, was an expert in philosophy and medicine, wrote many important works, which he set down as principles of Torah study, based on Jewish theology, logic, and contemporary science, which in his time was Aristotelian logic and philosophy. We will return to the Rambam and his revolutionary principles of Torah study. Another very influential medieval Jewish scholar is Nachmanides, also known as the Ramban, which is the acronym for Rabbi Moshe, the son of Nachman. Starting from the 13th century, Torah scholars began to reveal and write down various teachings of the Kabbalah, the hidden Torah, the secret Torah, and to explain the written Torah on its deepest levels. The Ramban, who was born in Spain and later in life moved to the land of Israel, was one of the first Jewish scholars to embark on this project and wrote a detailed commentary on the written Torah, which included the Kabbalah teachings. Subsequently, his disciples and other commentaries adopted his methodology, which over the centuries led to many written works based on the Kabbalah. The Vilna Gaon, which means the great teacher of Vilna, lived in the city of Vilna in the Russian Empire in the 18th century. He was one of the foremost Torah scholars since the Middle Ages. Besides his immense influence on Jewish law, Torah commentary, and Kabbalah, he called for Jewish resettlement of the land of Israel. Many of his students did make Aliyah to Israel beginning in 1808, first settling in the city of Tzfat in the northern part of Israel in the Galil. Some of them then moved to Jerusalem and reestablished the Ashkenazi Jewish community in Jerusalem. This wave of Aliyah came on the heels of a previous wave in the 18th century by followers of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidic Judaism. These first waves of religiously inspired Aliyah in the 18th and 19th century, after 1800 years of exile from the land, were a direct result of the Torah's clear messages, including principles of the oral Torah and daily Jewish prayers, which called for the Jewish people to eventually leave the exile and return to the land of Israel. This religious movement can be considered to be the beginning of the modern return to Zion. This was followed by more waves of Aliyah over the 19th and 20th centuries, which eventually led to the establishment of the State of Israel. The Vilna Gaon also encouraged the study of secular subjects such as mathematics, engineering, astronomy, geometry, biology, and music. He wrote a book on some of these subjects and requested that a student translate other books of mathematics into Hebrew. He is quoted as saying, "Just as a person will lack knowledge of other wisdoms, so too will they be missing 100-fold in the wisdom of Torah." So the Vilna Gaon explicitly called for the study of science as part of our education in understanding God's will, HaShem's will, and in understanding the Torah. The last few decades of the 19th century were a time of upheaval and great suffering for the Jewish people, but also a period of national resurgence and return to the biblical homeland of Israel. Among the rabbinic leaders that emerged during this period of the return to Zion, Rabbi Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook stands out as one of the most influential scholars in Jewish law and thought. He realized that the historic events that were unfolding, unprecedented in their global and Jewish national impact, were a realization of the ancient Jewish prophecies and perfectly fell in line with the deepest teachings of the Kabbalah. During his 50 years as a rabbi in several locations in Eastern Europe, culminating with the position of chief rabbi of British Mandatory Palestine during the first 3 decades of the 20th century, He wrote prolifically, stressing the importance of understanding the deep ramifications of the new world order that is unfolding. As part of this process, he emphasized the importance of revealing and disseminating the deeper messages of the Torah. He was well aware of the scientific revolutions that were transpiring, starting with Darwin's astounding theory of evolution in the 19th century, new ideas in philosophy and psychology, and the new physics that developed in the first few decades of the 20th century. He understood that humanity was advancing to higher levels of morality and knowledge at an unprecedented pace. He stressed that in these modern times, a deeper, all-encompassing understanding of the Torah is necessary to grasp HaShem's master plan as they appear in the written and oral Torah. And in this fashion, the hard questions that intelligent people are asking about HaShem can be addressed intelligently. So our time is up for now. So let's summarize. We asked some challenging questions about our relationship with HaShem. We expect intelligent, intuitively satisfying answers. As we read the Torah, we see that the Torah conveys to humanity messages and commandments relating to belief in HaShem, knowing HaShem, loving HaShem. And it may seem as though it is very hard to perceive this HaShem. So in our discussions, we will address these issues, including the hard questions of contemporary scientists. How can we engage in a partnership with this HaShem, who seems to be somewhat elusive? Okay, so we reviewed some basic Jewish history, some fundamental points concerning the written and oral Torah. We went through some of the major Torah scholars that we will refer to in our talks. And coming up is a review of the scientific method. So that's it for now. Bye now. Shalom.